Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a fog-soaked London alley where the day's first laundry steam rises long before the sun even considers showing up. You stand there, half drowsy, watching women in layered skirts shuffle through puddles, their breath mixing with chimney smoke in the cold morning air. You probably won't survive this. Victorian mornings were basically boot camps disguised as chores. But here you are, trying to keep your toes warm while cold dust sprinkles down like gloomy confetti. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching this right now, tell me your location and your local time. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge deeper into the alley, where rows of damp linens flap overhead like ghostly banners. The air smells like wet wool, old soap, and a hint of whatever mystery stew someone is reheating nearby. Here, laundry isn't a quick machine cycle, it's a ritual, and sometimes a battlefield. The women around you carry wooden buckets that creak as if they're protesting the weight. They start just after dawn, not because they're morning people, but because laundry took so long it practically swallowed the whole day. You watch someone pour a bucket of icy water into a wooden tub, and you feel the cold reach you even from a distance. Victorian London water wasn't just cold, it was the kind of cold that makes your fingers question their life decisions. People believed washing earlier helped clothes dry faster, though historians still argue whether this habit came from practicality or superstition. There's a fringe old idea that early morning fog softened fabrics, but honestly, that might just be someone's great-grandmother trying to justify unnecessary suffering. A woman nearby scrapes a chunk of homemade soap into the tub. The block looks harmless enough until she drops it and the smell hits you like a stern reminder that chemistry back then was basically hope for the best. This lye-based soap could sting your skin, your eyes, and possibly your dignity. One historical fact tucked into this chaos: many households really did make their own lye soap by mixing wood ash and animal fat. It worked, sort of, but it also dried hands so harshly that some women wrap their fingers in cloth before scrubbing. You glance at yours and feel suddenly grateful for modern moisturizers. Someone laughs nearby, one of those early morning "we're all suffering together" laughs, and you catch a bit of friendly sarcasm drifting through the steam. Apparently, the alley's washing order is sacred. Today, it's your turn to drag heavy shirts through the tub, but next week, someone else gets stuck washing Uncle Henry's socks that have seen things. One woman mutters, "At least the socks aren't moving this time." And you try not to imagine what she means. That's your first joke. Don't worry, there will be more. The tubs slosh, your sleeves dampen, and the alley begins filling with that rhythmic splash of dozens of people battling grime the slow, old-fashioned way. You rub fabrics across washboards, feeling the ridges scrape and the soap cling. Even though you're just observing, your shoulders tense as though you're doing the heavy work yourself. And maybe you are, in spirit. Laundry here is a shared exhaustion. You're part of it, whether you want to be or not. As you settle into the rhythm, you notice something calming beneath the chaos. The splash, the quiet chatter, the wet echo of fabric hitting wood. There's a strange peace to it, like the alley itself is humming a sleepy melody under the weight of all those dripping linens. And before you can drift too far into that lull, someone nudges you and says, "Careful, if you daydream too long, you will be the one rinsing the petticoats." Second joke, gentle but fair. You keep working your way through the steam, the fog, the clatter of buckets, moving deeper into the rhythm of Victorian laundry life without any sharp cuts or new beginnings. Just the story flowing, one wet sleeve at a time. You keep moving along the narrow stretch of alley until the sound of splashing shifts into something sharper, cloth snapping in the wind, wooden poles scraping against brick, and the unmistakable hiss of neighbors arguing over a patch of precious sunlight. You step into a small courtyard where drying lines crisscross overhead like a messy spiderweb designed by someone running late. Every line is full, every shirt and apron fighting for the tiniest sliver of warmth, and you quickly realize this place has its own rules. No signs posted, of course. The laws here are written in eyebrow raises and territorial foot tapping. You watch a woman lift a dripping bedsheet so large it could double as a ship's sail. She heaves it onto the line with the same intensity you'd expect from someone wrestling a stubborn cat. The sheet slaps the air, sending droplets into your face like the alley's version of a baptism. You blink through it, trying to look like you belong, Because if you don't, someone will absolutely make you move 3 inches to the left. These drying spots, they're status symbols. Whoever claims the sunny corner by the cracked chimney gets bragging rights until the next cloudy day. Your steam drifts from your still damp sleeves as you glance around. The historical fact that hits you first is simple but wild. Victorian London had so little indoor space that most drying had to happen outside, even in winter. Clotheslines were shared property, technically, but everyone acted as if they personally invented their own. A fringe tidbit floating around the courtyard today involves a rumor that Mrs. Alderton on the 3rd floor once hexed a neighbor's laundry so it would never dry properly. You have no idea whether the story is true, but you notice people folding their clothes faster as soon as they speak her name. You duck as another sheet swings toward you. This one's suspiciously damp around the edges. Mind the splash zone, someone mutters. You nod. The wind picks up, and suddenly the whole courtyard becomes a chaotic ballet of flapping fabric. A pair of trousers smacks you in the face, lightly, politely even, and you hear a few women snort behind you. That's your gentle joke number 3 for this 1,000-word stretch. Congratulations, you've been promoted to human clothesline. You try to shift to a safer corner, but that's when you hear it. A sharp gasp, followed by a shout. Someone's missing shirt, a nice one with buttons still attached, which is rare, is gone. Vanished. Stolen? Taken by the wind? Or spirited away by London's infamous laundry thief? Yes, that was a real thing. Petty laundry theft was so common that newspapers joked about nightshirt bandits. You hear the courtyard buzz with theories, including one woman swearing she once saw a ghost tug her laundry line as payback for washing clothes on a Sunday. Historians still argue whether such ghost stories came from superstition or from overworked minds desperate for a bit of excitement. You lean against a brick wall that feels damp, cold, and vaguely accusing. From here, you can see drying racks perched on tiny balconies, wooden frames tied together with knots so complicated they look like sailor handiwork. Some people claim these designs were adapted from naval rigging. Others say that's nonsense, and that Victorian carpenters simply liked over-engineering everything. Scholars still debate the earliest origins of these racks, and honestly, watching how fiercely people adjust and readjust them, you understand why no one has reached a consensus. They're chaotic little beasts. Someone lowers a basket of clothespins on a rope pulley, the creaking sound echoing through the courtyard.
You help hand it over, earning a rare approving nod. Around you, the drying operation continues like a strange public performance. Skirts billowing, shirts twisting, and everyone calculating angles like amateur meteorologists. You're starting to get the rhythm of it. Not clean or elegant, but communal, slightly competitive, and surprisingly peaceful when no one's fighting over elbow room. The courtyard hums, the fabrics sway, and you drift further into Victorian laundry life, letting the soft movement of the lines guide you without any need for a fresh introduction or break, just one long, continuous exhale of a day. You drift from the courtyard into a quieter corner where the air feels heavier, warmer, and tinged with a strange powdery scent. Here, tubs sit in neat rows like cauldrons in a wizard's workshop, each filled with milky water, dissolved powders, and fabric stiffening under layers of starch. You lean over one bucket, and a woman taps your wrist gently, warning you not to inhale too deeply, unless you want your nose to feel like it's been ironed flat. She means it affectionately, but you take the hint and step back. You reach out to touch a half-dry collar propped over a line, and immediately you feel the crackle, the unmistakable stiffness Victorian Londoners adored. Starch was their secret weapon for looking sharp, even if the texture made you feel like you were wearing clothing forged from edible cardboard. Historical fact: traditional starch came from wheat or potato, mixed into a thick paste and smeared onto fabrics to make them crisp. The practical idea was simple. Starch helped clothing appear clean longer, even when laundering was exhausting. But then someone decided to add herbs, powders, and suspicious mixtures that claimed to ward off insects, bad smells, and sometimes even bad luck. You realize quickly that Victorian laundry superstition had its own branch of chemistry. A woman next to you holds up a petticoat shimmering faintly blue. No, it's not a fashion statement. She's just finished dipping it into a bucket where a tiny indigo bag bobbed like a sleepy tea bag. Bluing. You've probably heard your grandmother mention it, but seeing it here feels oddly magical. The idea was that adding a tiny bit of blue countered yellowing in white clothing, and it worked, mostly. The quirky tidbit: people used everything from real indigo to artificial dyes to leftover ink powders. Someone once accidentally dipped their linens in bluing too strong and ended up with a dress that looked like it was auditioning for a sea-themed play. You don't mention that story aloud, but judging by the glances around you, almost everyone here has lived a version of it. You step closer to another tub where a woman stirs her mixture with the intensity of someone practicing for a soup stirring championship. She mutters about ratios, consistency, and getting it just right. You nod wisely, having no idea what right means. Victorians swore by their personal starch recipes the way modern people swear by skincare routines. And if you say your starch dries too soft, they'll tell you you're doing it wrong, and possibly that your family line has weak elbows. That's joke number 4. Soft, but true. Your gaze moves upward to the clothesline again. Some fabrics glisten under the weak sunlight with a slightly whitened sheen. Someone tells you, almost whispering, that moonlight whitening is the real trick, laying damp linens on the grass under full moon glow to make them brighter. You pause, not sure if they're pulling your leg. Historians still argue whether moonlight bleaching had any real effect, or whether it was a late-night excuse to enjoy quiet time outside. One researcher insists it was the dew, not the moonlight, doing the work. Another says the whole thing was superstition wrapped in damp fabric. But you don't argue. You just imagine yourself tiptoeing around a moonlit lawn, arranging petticoats like ceremonial offerings. Next to the whitening racks, someone proudly lifts a shirt starched so stiff it could probably stand upright on its own. They grin and say, "Perfect." You tap it gently and hear a faint click like topping porcelain. This shirt won't wrinkle, but it may also prevent its owner from bending their arms past a 30-degree angle. Comfort here is absolutely optional. You continue down the narrow passage, the crackle of drying starch following you like a quiet chorus. The smell of bluing lingers, a mix of earthy dye and clean cloth that somehow feels both soothing and sharp. You brush your fingers along a starched apron, half expecting it to bite back. Instead, it just trembles in the breeze, stiff but dignified, like a soldier standing attention. As the warm air settles around you, you feel the story stretching forward seamlessly. No sharp breaks, no new beginnings, just movement, scent, texture, and the crackling heart of a Victorian laundry day guiding you deeper. You follow the starch-scented air toward a doorway where heat pulses out like a miniature sun. As you step inside, the world tightens, walls closing in, ceiling dipping low, steam curling thick and slow around your face. This is the ironing room. Though calling it a room feels generous, it's more like a cramped pocket of space carved between kitchens, storage shelves, and someone's stack of coal buckets. The floorboards creak under your steps, and you instinctively duck, even though nothing is actually hanging low enough to hit you. The warmth is immediate, wrapping around you as if the room itself wants to toast you like a piece of Victorian breakfast. In the center, someone swings open a window barely wider than your hand. It does nothing. The steam immediately floats back in, stubborn as old gossip. Ironing here is a sweaty survival sport, and you feel it instantly. Your collar softens, your sleeves get heavy, and your hair does whatever it wants. This is the part of laundry day Victorians dreaded, the endless pressing, lifting, heating, and wiping, repeated over and over until every pleat lies flat and every shirt looks ready for a portrait. On a nearby table, you notice a stack of irons lined up like metallic bricks. Historical fact, these flat irons had to be heated on a stove or over hot coals, and their temperature was never consistent. Too cool and the wrinkles stayed, too hot and your shirt turned into a memory. Women often kept several irons warming at once, switching them out as soon as one cooled. You watch someone lift an iron with a folded cloth around the handle, Burns were common, and protective techniques were mostly improvised. People used layers of cloth, scraps of old leather, or even bits of damp fabric to prevent their hands from sizzling. Practical, yes, but not terribly effective. One woman shows me a minor scar on her thumb and laughs, "This is from the time my iron hissed at me." And honestly, the way these irons glow, I believe her. You reach forward to pick up one of the heavier irons, and the room collectively gasps, not because you might drop it, but because you might set it down on the wrong surface. These irons scorch wood tables, burn patterns into cloth, and occasionally crack if cooled too quickly. You cradle it gently, like holding a grumpy cat you're trying not to annoy. Joke number 5 arrives when someone says, "If it starts smoking, love, that's normal. If you start smoking, that's a problem." Beside you, a woman presses a shirt collar with a practiced hand, smoothing it out in precise strokes. The motion is hypnotic. Lift, glide, lift again. Wipe off excess moisture. Switch irons, glide again. You can feel your pulse syncing with it, your breathing slowing, as though the whole room hums a quiet rhythm.
Someone wipes sweat from their forehead and mutters that ironing is half labor, half wrestling match. You nod, because the steam has already blurred your vision enough to make you feel like you're watching a dream. Then you notice the ironing boards, if you can call them that. A wooden plank stretched over 2 chairs, a barrel turned on its side, even a padded windowsill. Makeshift, wobbly, but effective. A quirky tidbit you overhear. Some families believed ironing on a board supported by uneven legs prevented bad household luck, which is absolutely just superstition, but you don't say that out loud. Scholars still debate when the first standardized ironing board became common in England, with some arguing for the 1860s and others claiming it wasn't truly widespread until the 1890s. You glance at the rickety setup in front of you and quietly root for the 1890s theory. Someone hands you a damp handkerchief and gestures toward an iron cooling near the stove. You press it carefully, feeling the heat resonate through the handle. The fabric hisses faintly, a small sharp sound swallowed immediately by the room's thick steam. You feel oddly proud, as if you've mastered a tiny piece of Victorian survival. The women nod approvingly. They appreciate your effort, even if they know you'll be sore tomorrow. Your arms feel heavy already, and you've only pressed 2 square inches. You watch as shirts drape on hooks, skirts settle on padded frames, and steam rises in ghost-like swirls. There's something calming in the repetition. The rhythmic scrape of iron against fabric, the soft thud of someone shifting weight from one foot to the other, the warm whisper of cloth straightening under heat. It's a small world inside this room, hot and cramped, but intimate and strangely peaceful. An island of glowing coals and soft murmurs amid the wider chaos of the laundry alley. You let yourself sink into that warmth, letting the narrative drift onward, carrying you deeper without pause or fresh starts, just breathing, ironing, and softening into the heart of the day. You step back outside, blinking as the cooler air brushes against your overheated face. The alley feels wider now, or maybe it's simply that your body is adjusted from the ironing room sauna to something resembling normal weather. You wander toward the far end of the courtyard where voices drift lightly from windows and balconies. Gentle laughter, a clatter of wooden pegs, and the soft thump of folded fabrics landing in baskets. This is the quieter side of the laundry world, where neighbors exchange their final stories of the day and where secrets cling to damp hymns like the last drops of rinse water. You pause beneath a narrow balcony where 2 women pass items back and forth on a rope pulley. Freshly pressed shirts going up, empty baskets coming down. One woman leans out just enough to spot you below. "Still surviving?" she calls, and you wave a hand, trying to appear more composed than you feel. She nods approvingly, then launches into a tale about how her neighbor once used flour instead of starch and ended up with clothing so soft it kept slipping off the drying line and disappearing into the mud. She said, "We said the mud was hungry," she adds, shrugging. You laugh, because at this point, it could be true. Joke number 7 lands quietly and settles like warm steam. Further down the alley, you find a small wooden bench wedged between 2 brick walls. A few women sit here during breaks, exchanging everything from laundry tips to household strategies to thinly veiled warnings about whose dog chews on drying socks. You sit for a moment, letting the wooden seat press its ridges into your palms. Someone hands you a cup of lukewarm tea, strong, earthy, slightly smoky, and even though it's not exactly refreshing, It feels like an honor to be offered anything at all. A historical fact drifts into your mind as you listen. Victorian neighborhoods, especially working-class ones, relied deeply on shared domestic labor. Laundry wasn't just a chore, it was a social network, a community heartbeat. People traded recipes for whitening mixtures, debated which soap saved the most effort, and even built informal alliances to protect each other's drying spaces. The alley wasn't simply a utility space, it was a gathering point, a support system, sometimes even a negotiation ground for small disputes. As you sip the tea, someone points upward to the rolling clouds gathering overhead. Rain, the shared enemy of every Victorian laundry day. You can practically feel the tension spike across the courtyard. Women begin glancing at their lines, calculating how much time they have left. One mutters, "If it rains now, I'll scream." Another says she heard that placing dried lavender under clothes keeps them smelling fresh even if the rain hits. A quirky tidbit you overhear: some people swore that hanging clothes under large trees offered magical protection from sudden showers. You look at the trees in this alley and doubt their magical credentials. Still, you don't crush the hope. Then the first tiny drop hits your hand, a single soft tap. Instantly, the entire alley transforms into a controlled panic. People scramble, reaching for lines, unpinning garments with lightning reflexes. Someone yells to grab the shirts first. They're the hardest to re-iron, while another rushes to rescue the starched aprons that have finally achieved peak stiffness. You leap into action too, grabbing a half-damp towel and ducking under a line before it smacks you in the face again. The wind picks up, the second drop falls, and suddenly you're part of a chaotic, flapping ballet of fabrics and urgency. Historians still argue whether Victorians exaggerated their hatred of rain or whether laundry genuinely ranked as one of the most stressful weekly tasks. Watching this rush, you'd lean toward the latter. Rain meant more work, wasted starch, hours lost, and the risk of clothes picking up soot from the street. There was no winning against weather. You simply had to surrender faster than your neighbor. Fortunately, the drizzle pauses, just long enough for everyone to breathe. You watch as a woman lifts a shirt, gently shaking it, whispering a tiny prayer of relief because the fabric is still dry enough to avoid disaster. People gradually return to folding, their movements slower now, more careful, as though the scare loosened the tension in their shoulders. You stay until the last clothespin drops into its basket. The final fold is yours to witness, a simple linen towel pressed neatly and tucked into a woven basket with quiet care. It feels symbolic, the soft exhale of a very long day. Someone beside you murmurs, "Funny how they say Victorians were always tidy. If they only knew." It's a final light joke, number 7, offered with a half smile and the weariness of someone who has survived more laundry days than she can count. The alley grows calm again. Buckets empty, steam thins, and you feel yourself settling into the rhythm of closing moments, the way the day exhales after hours of heat, chatter, and the crackle of drying starch. The sounds around you soften as if the alley itself is winding down, letting its damp stones cool after a long, bustling day. You take a slow breath, feeling the lingering warmth of the ironing room fade from your skin, replaced by the gentle touch of the evening breeze drifting through narrow passageways. The last bits of steam lift into the air, like ghosts dissolving into twilight. And every movement, from the light sway of a forgotten clothespin to the settling creak of a wooden bench, seems to stretch out longer and calmer, inviting you to slow with it. You watch the fading lights settle on the rooftops, turning each chimney and line of bricks into silhouettes softened by the early night haze. The alley feels different now, almost tender, its sharp edges rounded, its noises hushed, its heartbeat steady. Laundry baskets rest, lines hang still, and the people who filled this space with movement and laughter have slipped back to their warm kitchens, leaving behind a gentle stillness that wraps itself around you like a loosely folded blanket. Your breathing steadies, your shoulders relax. You let your mind drift lightly over the day's scenes, the splash of cold water, the hiss of hot irons, the sudden scramble at the first touch of rain. Each memory fades into the next with a softness that feels almost like fabric brushing past your fingertips. Nothing urgent remains. No more rushing, no more lifting, no more tugging at stubborn clothespins, only quiet. So, as the last traces of daylight melt into the soft hum of night, let yourself settle. Let the world around you slow into something warm and weightless. And let this calm carry you wherever your rest is waiting.